The morning sun over the coastal town of Porto Silvaggio was a gentle, forgiving gold, the kind that promised warmth without scorching. And Livia Rossi met it with the hard-won gratitude of a woman who had built her sanctuary brick by emotional brick. The Saturday farmers' market was her weekly meditation, a vibrant tapestry of overflowing crates haggling nanas, and the earthy perfume of soil and ripening fruit. Here, amid the simple commerce of life, the ghosts of her past seemed incapable of finding her. She moved with an economy of motion, her woven basket hooked over one arm, the other securely holding the small, confident hand of her 5-year-old son, Leo. Leo was a burst of unfettered curiosity, his gray eyes so startlingly serious in his young face, wide as he pointed at a pyramid of sun-burnished lemons. "Can we get 3, Mama? 1 for tea, 1 for cake. And when does it smell?" Livia smiled, a genuine expression that softened the careful vigilance that always lived in her gaze. "We can get 4, she countered, ruffling his dark hair. 1 for throwing at seagulls." He giggled, the sound a pure, clean note in the humid air, and Livia's heart clenched with a love so fierce it was momentarily painful. He was her reason, her secret, her greatest masterpiece. Her business, a tiny botanical apothecary called Radis Root, was thriving quietly. She sold tinctures for anxiety, balms for sore muscles, and teas for sleeplessness, remedies for the mundane aches of life, a world away from the gunshot wounds and betrayal-induced panic she had once tended. She was known in the town as the kind, slightly reserved herborista with a clever son, a woman who asked no questions and offered no past. It was a persona she wore comfortably, a cloak of normalcy she had woven with immense care. The peach stall was her final stop. She was selecting fruit, her fingers testing for the perfect give. Leo chattering about the fig tree they were cultivating in their cottage's courtyard when the world tilted. It was not a sound, nor a sight at first. It was a primal shift in atmospheric pressure, a sudden, chilling hollow in the pit of her stomach. The hair on the back of her neck rose. It was the sensation of being meticulously, irrevocably seen. The market's cacophony faded into a dull, roaring silence in her ears. Slowly, as if moving through seawater, she turned. And there he was, Matsuka Volkov, Matteo to the few, who dared a familiarity he never invited, stood 20 feet away, a monument of stillness amidst the flowing crowd. He was older, the lines around his intense gray eyes etched deeper. His black hair swept back with a severity that spoke of uncompromising authority. The perfectly tailored charcoal suit was absurdly out of place among the linen and cotton, yet he wore it like armor, as if he had simply chosen a different, more chaotic boardroom. His gaze was a physical touch, a scalpel peeling away the 5 years, the false name, the carefully constructed piece in an instant. Time crystallized. Livia's breath vanished. Her fingers tightened around a peach to the point of bruising. Every instinct screamed to run, to snatch Leo and melt into the labyrinth of alleys she knew so well. But paralysis held her. It was the flight of a rabbit, realizing the hawk has already struck. Matteo began to move. He didn't stride. He flowed, people parting for him without seeming to know why, an instinctual deference to power. His eyes never left hers, reading the terror, the shock, the defiance in one comprehensive, devastating glance. Then Leo tugged on her skirt. "Mama, look, these ones are smiling." He held up a fig split open at the stem, its pink interior exposed. The word "Mama" hung in the air between Livia and the approaching storm. Matteo's gaze snapped downward. The calculation was instantaneous, a lightning storm in the depths of his gray irises. He saw the boy's face, the mirror of his own challenging stare, the stubborn set of a jaw he shaved every morning. He saw the age 5 years, and the math was a brutal, unforgiving equation. The controlled mask of his features fractured for a microsecond, revealing a yawning chasm of shock, followed by a tsunami of pure, unadulterated rage. He closed the final distance. He smelled of expensive sandalwood and cold, clean power. The air around them crackled. "Livia," he said. Her name was not a greeting. It was an indictment, a relic, a key turning in a long locked tomb. She found her voice, thin but sharp. "You're not here. This is a mistake." His lips thinned into a humorless line. He barely glanced at Leo, but his entire presence seemed to engulf the boy. "The only mistake," he said, his voice a low vibration meant only for her, "was ever letting you walk away. And the evidence of that is currently holding a figure." Leo, sensing the tension, pressed against Livia's leg, staring up at the imposing stranger with wary curiosity. "He has nothing to do with you," Livia hissed, the lie tasting like ash. Matteo leaned in a mockery of intimacy. "He has my eyes. He has my father's chin. He has 5 years of my life." The controlled fury in his whisper was more terrifying than any shout. "We will talk. Now, you will take me to wherever you call home, and you will explain this." "Or," he continued, his gaze sweeping the market, "her life. This charming fiction ends. Today, loudly. I will have a dozen men here in minutes, and this quiet little drama will become a very public one. Your choice, Mia Mowgli." The old term, "my wife," was a sucker punch. The ultimatum was absolute. She saw in his eyes he meant it. Her sanctuary was already breached. Fighting here would only expose Leo to more trauma. Swallowing a knot of pure fear, she straightened her shoulders. The protectress rose, overshadowing the frightened woman. "Come on, Leo," she said, her voice miraculously steady. She took his hand, feeling its small, trusting warmth. "We're going home. We have a guest." The walk to her stone cottage on the outskirts of the town was the longest of her life. She was hyper-aware of Matteo walking a step behind, a silent, predatory shadow. She felt his eyes on her, on Leo, cataloging everything. The path she took, the wildflower she nodded at, the way Leo hummed a little tune. The weight of his presence was a physical pressure, collapsing the careful world she'd built. As she unlocked the blue wooden door under a bower of wisteria, she didn't see her beloved home. She saw a trap, and she was leading the wolf directly into it. The cottage interior, usually a haven of dappled sunlight and the soothing scent of drying lavender and rosemary, now felt like a cage. Leo, intuitively picking up on the charged silence, retreated to his small pile of wooden blocks in the corner, casting frequent, uncertain glances at the scary man, who filled the space with a dense, unspoken history. "Leo, cuor mio, why don't you build me the tallest tower in all of Italy?" Livia suggested, her voice straining for lightness. The boy nodded, a serious little soldier, and bent to his task, seeking solace in order. Matteo stood in the center of a living room, a dissonant statue. His eyes swept the room, the shelves of jars, the well-worn sofa, the drawings pinned to the fridge, the evidence of a life lived without him. Each detail seemed to offend him. "Explain," he commanded, the single word granite. The fear in Livia's veins began to harden into something else, a long-suppressed anger. She was no longer the young woman in awe of the powerful Matteo Volkov. She was Leo's mother. "You don't get to march in here and demand anything. You lost that right 5 years ago." He took a step closer, the air crackling. "I lost the right? You vanished. He took a piece of me I didn't even know existed, and you vanished. A note, Livia? Don't look for me." After 3 years of marriage, that was my epitaph. Memories, sharp and visceral, flooded her. Not just the good ones, the whispered secrets in dark bedrooms, the way he'd defend her honor with a glance, the fierce, all-consuming passion that made her feel both powerful and utterly possessed. But the bad, the creeping paranoia, the silent men with hard eyes, the gradual understanding that his world was not just dangerous, it was hungry, and it would consume anything he loved. "I left," she said, forcing her voice to be calm, "because I was pregnant, and because I overheard Constantine talking to one of your lieutenants in your own library." She saw a flicker in his eyes at the traitor's name. "They weren't planning a coup against you. They were planning to use me. And when they found out about the baby, they were going to use the heir to control you, to make you a puppet. My presence, our child's existence, was your greatest vulnerability." Matteo went very, very still. The rage seemed to drain from him, leaving something hollow and cold. "I was a liability, Matteo, a weakness your enemies, men you broke bread with, saw before you did. So I removed the weakness. I became a ghost to protect your child, to protect what was left of you." The confession held for so long, spilled out, raw and aching. For the first time, the impeccable control that defined Matteo Volkov truly shattered. He staggered back a step, as if physically struck. His hand rose to his face, pressing against his eyes. Constantine, he breathed, the name a curse. He died 3 years ago. A car accident. Very tragic. Livia understood. Matteo had purged the sickness, but too late. I look for you, he said, his voice raw, stripped of its power. It was the voice of the man she'd glimpsed in the dead of night, the one not carved from marble. For 2 years, I turned the world inside out. I thought you'd been taken. I thought you were dead. I waged wars looking for a ghost. And then, I just had to live with the hole, the silence where you used to be. He looked at Leo, who was meticulously stacking blocks, his small tongue peeking out in concentration. The awe and anguish on Matteo's face were unbearable to witness. You let me live in that hell. You let me believe I had lost everything. When this, he gestured toward their son, his hand trembling slightly. This was out here growing. Would you have let me go? She challenged, her own tears threatening. If I had come to you, told you I was pregnant and scared, would you have let me take him somewhere safe? Or would you have locked me in a gilded tower, guarded by 1,000 men, a constant panicking target? Be honest. The silence that followed was her answer. His jaw worked. He could not lie to her. He never could. He would have protected her obsessively, suffocatingly. But he would never have let her go. The truth hung between them, a bridge of shared pain and monumental misunderstanding. Dusk painted the room in long, melancholic shadows. Leo, exhausted by unspoken tension, fell asleep on the rug. Gently, Matteo lifted him, his large hands impossibly careful, and carried him to his small bedroom. Watching the fearsome Mafia boss tuck a dinosaur print blanket around his son was an image so disorienting it cracked the bedrock of Livia's resentment. When he returned, the space between them was different. The fury had burned away, leaving a landscape of ash and exposed nerves. They stood in her small kitchen, the ghost of their old intimacy haunting the space. I have missed you, he said, the admission torn from him. Every day. It was not a quiet missing. It was a scream. Her resolve wavered. The memory of his touch, a language her body had never forgotten, echoed through her. He saw it, the slight softening in her eyes, the hitch in her breath. He reached out, his knuckles brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. The contact was electric, a spark igniting dry tinder. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a collision, a claiming and a surrender, a conversation of 5 years of anger, grief, and relentless, unresolved longing. His arms banded around her, pulling her against the solid wall of his body, and she met him with equal desperation, her fingers tangling in his hair, nails scoring his scalp. It was passion laced with pain, a furious, spicy reunion that spoke of possession and apology all at once. When they finally broke apart, gasping for air, her back against the cool countertop, the world had rearranged itself. The past was not forgiven, but it was no longer a wall. It was a chasm they had just leapt across, with no certainty of what lay on the other side. A tense, new routine imposed itself on the cottage by the sea. Matteo did not ask permission. He simply remained, a permanent disruptive and terrifyingly attractive fixture. His presence was a low-grade hum in the walls, a restructuring of Livia's universe. He replaced the locks with imposing, silent mechanisms the first day. A week later, a discreet but palpable security detail appeared at the periphery of their lives. A man selling fish who never ran out. A couple painting landscapes who never finished. For Leo, the scary man slowly transformed into Matteo. Matteo, who with a startling innate patience, taught him how to skip stones on the cove surface. Matteo, who listened with grave attention to long, convoluted stories about snails and superheroes. Matteo, whose large hand completely enveloped Leo's small one when they walked. Livia watched, her heart a tangled knot of fear and a treacherous, blooming hope. She saw the boy's innate curiosity about this formidable new presence, and she saw the man's utter, captivated devotion to his son. It disarmed her completely. Her relationship with Matteo was a minefield navigated in the dark. By day, they were often tense, negotiating boundaries over coffee. He wanted them in Palermo, behind the walls of his fortified estate. She refused to let her life, or Leo's, be defined by fortifications again. Their arguments were fierce intellectual duels where her hard-won independence clashed with his primal need to control and protect. But by night, when Leo was asleep, the tension transmuted into a different, more incendiary currency. Their physical reconnection was a mature, potent force. It was not the frantic coupling of their first reunion, but a deliberate, exploratory rediscovery. In the quiet of her bedroom, lit by moonlight, they spoke a language of touch that bypassed their wounded histories. A slow, deliberate kiss that tasted of shared wine and unresolved questions. The heat of his palms spanning the small of her back, pulling her into the hard plane of his stomach. The sharp intake of her breath as his mouth found the sensitive curve of her neck, a spot he remembered with infuriating accuracy. It was spicy with intent, charged with 5 years of pent-up desire, but laced now with a profound emotional current. The intimacy was a bridge, a fragile, thrilling connection where words failed them. In those moments, she didn't see the pack-on. She saw the man who remembered how she liked to be touched, who whispered her name like a prayer against her skin, whose own control unraveled beautifully, devastatingly in her arms. One afternoon, while Matteo was with Leo at the tide pools, the outside world she feared finally intruded. A sleek, unfamiliar car pulled up outside Radis. A man with the casual cruelty of a hyena in his smile entered, pretending to browse. He recognized her not as Livia Rossi, but as the vanished signora of Matteo Volkov. He made a veiled, threatening comment about picturesque towns being so prone to accidents. His eyes lingering on a drawing Leo had made taped to her counter. The ice-cold dread of the past returned. When Matteo returned, she told him, her voice steady but her hands trembling, instead of the explosive anger she expected. His face settled into a mask of terrifying calm. This was the Volkov the world knew. His name is Fiero, a vulture from the Moretti crew. My being here unguarded has made you a visible target again. Then you should leave, she said, the words tasting bitter. He crossed the room in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders. Listen to me. I am not leaving you. Not again. But you were right. Hiding you didn't work. Locking you away won't work either. He took a deep breath, the strategist overriding the possessive lover. We face it, together. You know this town, its rhythms, its secrets. I know the wolves of the gate. We use both. It was a concession of monumental proportions. He was not dictating. He was proposing a partnership, a spark of her old self. The one who had stood beside him before the world broke, flared to life. Together, she agreed, the word of vow. The plan was not one of brute force, but of cunning misdirection. Livia suggested they use the one place her knowledge was absolute. Her shop. It was the heart of her new identity, the place Fiero had scouted. Matteo's men unseen would create a distraction at the outskirts of town, drawing Fiero's muscle. Matteo himself would be the bait, appearing vulnerable, visiting his mistress at her place of work. The day was deceptively serene. Livia opened Radis as usual, the scent of chamomile and sage hanging in the air. Matteo arrived, playing his part, a powerful man slumming, his guard slightly lowered. She felt the tension coiling in him, a leopard poised to spring. Fiero entered, his smirk wider. Signor Volkov, a domestic scene. How touching. What do you want, Fiero? Matteo's voice was a bored drawl, but Livia saw the lethal focus in his eyes. The Morettis send their regards. They feel a man with familial distractions might be open to a reconsideration of certain territories, starting with a gesture of goodwill. The boy, for example, a short vacation, to ensure your cooperative mood. Rage, pure and incandescent, flooded Livia. It overrode fear. As Matteo took a subtle step forward, Livia moved. She calmly picked up a large spray bottle from behind the counter, labeled rosewater mist. You seem stressed, Signor, she said, her voice eerily calm. This is a new blend, for tension. Before he could react, she sprayed a fine, fragrant mist directly into Fiero's face. It was not rose water. It was a potent, fast-acting distillate of belladonna and passion flower she kept for extreme emergencies. A non-lethal, but instantly debilitating neurotoxin. Fierro gasped, his eyes streaming, his muscles seizing in confusion and weakness. He staggered, clawing at his face. In that moment of shocked incapacitation, Matteo was upon him. It was not a brawl. It was a swift, precise, and brutal dismantling. A single, shattering blow to the solar plexus. A vicious twist of an arm that ended in a sickening crack. And Fierro was on the ground, writhing, gasping through the chemical burn in his lungs and his own pain. Matteo stood over him, a king of violence. He placed a polished shoe on the man's throat, not quite crushing it. "You tell the Morettis," he said, his voice colder than the deep sea, "that my family is not a topic for discussion. My son is not a bargaining chip, and my wife is far more dangerous than I ever was. If anyone looks at them, breathes in their direction, I will not take territories. I will salt the earth where your family stand. This was your only warning." He kicked the man once precisely into unconsciousness. His men, materializing silently, removed the broken threat from her shop floor. In the sudden silence, Livia began to shake. The adrenaline bled away, leaving her hollow. Matteo turned to her. The killer's mask fell, and in his eyes she saw only a desperate, terrifying fear. Fear for her, for Leo. He pulled her into his arms, his own body trembling. "Dio, Livia, your spray." "I've had 5 years to prepare," she mumbled into his chest, the strength leaving her. That night, the intimacy was different. It was not a clash of fiery passions, but a deep, slow merging. It was a claiming of solace, a reaffirmation of life. His touches were reverent, worshipful, as if rememorizing her as both lover and protector. She clung to him, seeking anchor in the storm he both represented and shielded her from. They moved together in the dark, not in conquest, but in a profound, wordless pact. Afterward, he held her, his face buried in her hair. "I am restructuring everything," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "The shipping, the imports, all of it. It will be clean, legitimate. By the time Leo is old enough to understand, the Volkov name will mean vineyards and boardrooms, not blood and back alleys. I swear this to you." It was the vow she had needed 5 years ago. It was a promise that finally, truly, laid the past to rest. 1 year later, the cliffside villa above Porto Silvaggio was a testament to synthesis. It was secure, but open to the sea and sky, filled with light and Livia's plants. Matteo's study had a view of the cove, his computer screens showing stock tickers and export manifests beside Leo's latest crayon masterpiece. Their life was a hybrid, a mature blending of two worlds. They spent weeks here, where Leo attended the local school and Livia tended an expanded garden. They spent time in Palermo, in a modern, sleek penthouse where Matteo oversaw his legitimizing empire. There were no more shadows in suits. The protection was seamless, professional, and distant. Leo was a happy, vibrant boy. He spoke of Papa Matteo with a matter-of-fact pride, weaving the formidable man effortlessly into the fabric of his life. The three of them were a unit, forged in crisis and choice. On the evening of their anniversary, not their first wedding, but of the day Livia had returned to the market a year ago, Matteo led her and Leo to the highest point of the cliffs. The sun was a molten spill on the horizon. He did not get down on one knee. Instead, he stood before her, Leo holding both their hands, a circle under the darkening sky. From his pocket, he produced 2 simple new bands of braided platinum and gold. "We had vows once," he said, his voice carrying on the salt breeze. "They were broken by the world, and by my failure to see it clearly. These are not those vows." He looked at her, his gray eyes clear. "I vow to see you always as my partner, my equal, the fierce, brilliant woman who is the root of our family. I vow that my strength will never again be a cage for you, but a foundation we build upon together." He slipped a ring onto her finger. Tears streamed freely down Livia's face. She took the other ring. "And I vow to never leave you, to fight your battles in the dark again, to stand beside you, not behind you, to build a future with you, not just hide from the past." She placed the ring on his finger. Leo, grinning, produced a small, clumsily woven ring of olive twigs from his pocket. "For the family," he announced solemnly. Matteo took it and placed it gently over their joined hands, a rustic crown over metal. It was not a legal ceremony. It was something more profound, a conscious, mature choice to redefine what they were. La Nostra Famiglia, our family. Later, with Leo asleep between them after a story, Matteo brushed his lips against Livia's temple. "Are you happy, mia Radis?" he asked, using his new endearment for her, my root. She looked at their son's peaceful face, felt the solid, steady presence of the man at her back, and thought of the market stall, the peaches, and the terrifying, fateful moment that had led them here, to this fiercer, more beautiful peace. She had run from a gilded cage. She had fought for and won a partnership built on truth, respect, and a love that had been tempered, not broken, by the years. "Yes," she whispered into the twilight, her heart full and certain. "I'm finally completely home." Did Livia and Matteo's second chance at love capture your imagination? For more stories of fierce, mature romance where secrets unravel and love is reforged in fire, explore the rest of our collection. Your next unforgettable read awaits.